You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to lift a finger. You don't even need to be in the room. Yet, your enemy crumbles. How? In this video, we'll unlock Machiavelli's cold, quiet blueprint for destroying anyone without ever appearing to attack them, because the most dangerous power is invisible. You never have to raise your voice to destroy someone. No knives, no blood direct threats, just a mirror angled perfectly toward their ego. You see, the strongest weapon in your arsenal is not force. It is permission. Permission for them to believe they are greater than they are, more powerful, more intelligent, more invincible than anyone else dares to say out loud. And so, you say it, but only just enough. You start with flattery, but not the obvious kind, not the desperate kind that reveals itself as manipulation. No. You deliver the kind that feels like a secret something forbidding, as if you see something in them no one else is brave enough to say. You praise their instincts when they're average. You compliment their intelligence when they make simple deductions. You ask them for advice on matters you've already mastered, and then you step back, because the ego does not grow in the spotlight. It grows in silence. It expands in the void you leave behind. In your absence, they begin to hear the echo of your praise repeating inside their head, over and over, until it feels like their own voice. They begin to believe they are something more, that they are untouchable, and that is when the cracks begin to form. Understand this. The ego is not just a weakness. It is a time bomb. The more you feed it, the closer they walk to their own destruction. And they do it willingly. They think it's a stage, but it's a cliff. So when they begin to speak more than they listen, when they stop asking questions and start making proclamations, when they take credit for what they once shared, that is when you know they are ready, not for confrontation, but for collapse. Because now their overconfidence will betray them. They will start to take greater risks. They'll ignore warnings, push boundaries, alienate allies, step into rooms they are not ready to command, speak in meetings where they should remain silent, laugh off threats that should keep them awake at night. But they won't see it. They will think their boldness is power, that the tremble in others' voices is fear. Why? When in fact, it's restraint. People don't challenge them because of fear. They don't challenge them because they're watching the inevitable unfold, and you remain in the background. Always watching, always supportive, smiling, nodding. You ask them questions that inflate their sense of control. How did you manage to turn that situation around so easily? Have you ever considered writing about your leadership style? They laugh, humble on the surface, but beneath it, swollen with pride. They don't realize these are traps, not of action, but of perception. Because the more they talk, the more they reveal. The more they take credit, the more others begin to resent. And as their ego grows, their judgment shrinks. Eventually, they begin to believe they cannot lose, that they are the reason the world turns. And that is when they fall. Not because you struck them, not because you humiliated, but because you stood silently beside them while they lit the fire themselves. You didn't place the matches in their hand. You simply whispered that fire was a sign of greatness. You didn't destroy them. You let them do it. With pride, with certainty, with their own voice echoing in their ears, telling them they could not be touched. A man can survive bankruptcy. He can rebuild a fortune. He can even escape a prison cell. But once you touch his reputation, not with a blade, not with proof, but with doubt, he begins to rot from the inside out. You don't need evidence to ruin someone. You only need suggestion. A whisper, carefully timed. A pause when a name is mentioned. A raised eyebrow in the right room. Because the truth is fragile. But rumors are eternal. And the beauty of this method is that you never appear to be the one who started anything. You don't attack them directly. That would make you a threat, a visible enemy, a figure to rally against. No, you remain in the shadows. You let others carry the poison. You begin by planting small seeds. Maybe you're at dinner. Their name comes up. You lean back slightly and you smile, but it's tight, subtle, and you say something like, "Interesting man." Very confident, almost too confident, don't you think? Then you move on. You change the subject. Let the discomfort linger. It's not what you said. It's what you didn't say. That gap, the silence, you left in the air, that is what people remember. That is where the suspicion begins to grow. And suspicion is a flame that feeds itself. Soon, others begin to notice what they didn't notice before. They hear arrogance where they once heard passion. They see selfishness where they once saw drive. Because now, they're looking for it. The reputation you damage doesn't need to fall all at once. It just needs to tilt. A little. Enough that everything built on top of it starts to slide. You begin to notice little shifts. People start hesitating before backing their ideas. They don't get invited into certain rooms. Decisions are made without them. And all you did was ask a question. You didn't accuse. You didn't insult. You didn't even raise your voice. But the damage begins to compound. Because now others are taking ownership of the destruction. They feel clever for noticing. They feel responsible for exposing what they believe is a hidden flaw. And you remain untouched. Your hands are clean. Your words, on record, are harmless. But your tone, your pauses, your expressions, they did all the work. If you're strategic, you escalate slowly. At a meeting, when they speak, you glance at someone nearby. Just a glance. The smallest trace of amusement on your face, as if what was said didn't quite make sense. Now the room doesn't just hear their words. They question them. They replay them in their minds. They search for the flaw, and they find it, even if it isn't there. Because once doubt has a foothold, it doesn't stop. It multiplies. The target begins to sense something is wrong, but they can't name it. They feel the shift in the room, the coldness in conversations, the shrinking space around their influence. They start to defend themselves when no one is attacking. They grow defensive in meetings, paranoid in casual settings. They overcompensate, over-explain, overcorrect, and in doing so, they fulfill the very image you whispered into the world. They become the unstable one, the insecure one, the one who is clearly hiding something. The masterpiece of this strategy is that you don't need lies. You don't need a scandal. You only need people to wonder. Once people wonder, they start watching. And once they start watching, they find what they were told to expect. Because perception is not based on truth. It's based on anticipation. And you've set the stage perfectly. They begin to fall in public, but not dramatically. No explosion, just a slow fade, a loss of authority, a withdrawal of loyalty, and no one can say when it started. The sharpest blade is not the one you hold. It's the one your enemy sleeps beside. You don't destroy a man by attacking him directly. You let him sit at a table with people he no longer trusts. Every empire falls the same way. From within, not by the sword, but by the whisper. Not in the battlefield, but in the council chamber. So when you face an opponent too powerful to confront head-on, you don't aim at him. You aim at the ones closest to him. The friends, the lieutenants, the trusted few. You begin by studying the circle. Patiently, you watch how they speak, where they sit, whose opinions they follow, who smiles a second too long, who waits before nodding. You're not looking for enemies. You're looking for fault lines. Then, you start to touch those lines, lightly, strategically, not with accusations. With compliments, you praise the quiet ones in private. You flatter the insecure ones in passing. You offer advice when no one is asking. And most importantly, you plant the idea that they are being overlooked. Strange, I always thought you were the one driving that strategy. But he got the credit, didn't he? He trusts you, of course. Still, I wonder if he's really listening. Small comments, quick moments, no drama, but they land like pins under the skin. Barely noticeable, but impossible to ignore. Now the seeds are in place. You step back and let time do the rest, because nothing spreads faster than quiet resentment. And as that resentment grows, your target starts to feel it. Not with words, but in energy, the eye contact that fades, the lack of laughter, the missed invitations, the sudden formality in casual meetings. He feels it, but he doesn't know where it's coming from. And so, he starts to question the ones closest to him. He starts holding meetings without certain people. He begins second-guessing decisions. He corrects his allies in front of others. He tightens his grip. And in doing so, he makes enemies of his own men. What you've done is simple. You've turned his greatest strength into a ticking bomb. You've given his trusted allies a taste of suspicion, and you've watched them poison his house from the inside. They start to act on their own. They whisper back. They plan without him. Some seek favor elsewhere. Some begin to sabotage. And a few begin to believe they could replace him. And now your target is surrounded. But not by threats he can see, not by opponents he can fight, by doubts, by divisions, by the slow unraveling of trust. He tries to patch it up, to rebuild the loyalty, to remind them of past victories. But it doesn't matter. Once unity is gone, it cannot be restored. The circle no longer functions as one. It becomes a cage, a theater of smiles and silence. They start withholding information. They leak details. They hesitate when he speaks. And eventually, he finds himself alone at the center of his own empire, still seated on the throne, still wearing the crown, but with no one willing to defend him. Because loyalty is not eternal. It is conditional, and all you did was shift the conditions, not by force, not by conflict, but by showing his allies something he worked hard to hide, that their loyalty might not be returned. The most dangerous person in the room is not the one speaking, it's the one listening. Quietly, patiently, while others raise their voices, you lower yours. While others demand attention, you retreat into stillness. And while they burn their energy trying to appear powerful, you conserve yours by shaping what they never see. This is not about pretending to be weak. This is about appearing irrelevant, while every move shifts the outcome in your favor. You must let others feel like they are leading. Let them feel like they're setting the pace, choosing the strategy, calling the shots. And as they grow comfortable in that illusion, you take control of the frame, not by confrontation, but by subtle redirection. You shape the conversation not with commands, but with timing. You ask the question that steers the room. You make the suggestion that becomes consensus. You withdraw support from an idea, not by opposing it, but by letting it hang in silence. You don't take the credit. You let them take it. Gladly, even eagerly. Because the moment they believe they are leading, they stop looking behind them. They stop suspecting that every favorable turn was carefully engineered by someone they overlooked. And that is where your true power lies. Not in titles, not in public praise, but in narrative control. You must understand this deeply. The person who controls the story controls the outcome. Let them win the room. Let them speak louder, longer. Let them make declarations. You respond slowly, like you're still thinking. Like the moment doesn't matter much to you, but your silence says more than their entire speech. Because silence, when used correctly, becomes gravity. Others turn to you not because you demand it, but because your restraint creates the illusion of depth. When you speak less, your words carry more weight. People assume you see more, know more, are more, and you use that assumption to paint the image you want them to see. Not a lie, not even a manipulation, just a frame, a window. carefully cleaned and positioned, so that when they look through it, they see what benefits you. And what's most elegant about this method is that you never appear to be the source of anything, not the tension, not the ideas, not the downfall. If someone begins to lose status, you never pushed them. If the crowd turns against a decision, you were merely present. If your enemy begins to unravel, you simply raise an eyebrow. You don't correct, you don't accuse. You let the story tell itself, because by the time they realize the narrative has shifted, they are already the villain in it, the overreacher, the fool, the one who pushed too hard, took too much, talked too loud. And you are remembered as calm, reasonable. Above it all, that is the power of appearing passive. You remove suspicion. You erase threat. You become the one no one thinks to blame, even as you steer the ship. And if you've done it right, when the collapse finally arrives, it won't be traced to you. It will look like coincidence. It will look like justice. It looked like fate, but it was always you visible, intentional, unseen. While they danced in the spotlight, you rewrote the stage directions. While they chased the applause, you rewired the lights. While they stood tall and loud, you built the trap they never noticed. Because power, real power, does not announce itself. It doesn't roar. It doesn't shine. It whispers. And the world listens without knowing why. You've learned now what true power looks like. Not in the clash of swords, not in shouted commands or public victories, but in quiet orchestration, invisible manipulation, the silent hand behind the fall. To destroy someone without attacking them, you don't need to lift a weapon. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't even need to be in the room. You feed their ego. So they walk themselves into ruin. You stain their name. Without ever speaking ill of them, you turn their friends into shadows and let them rot in their own castle. You control the entire narrative, while appearing indifferent, even noble, and in the end they fall, publicly, irreversibly, and no one ever traces it back to you. That is the art. That is the lesson. That is the way of Machiavelli. You don't destroy them. You let them destroy themselves. You only make sure the ground beneath them is already gone.